the Indian Air Force presenting 12 very sharp images to the Indian government as evidence of the aerial surgical strikes that were carried out by the Air Force, and that now is with the Ministry of Defense to put out at a time and place of their choosing. We've got the inside story on the evidence that the Indian Air Force has presented to the Indian government. Okay, so Shiv Arur has been able to get from sources within the establishment specific details about the evidence that's been given to the Indian government by the Indian Air Force. Shiv, take our viewers through the kind of evidence that the Air Force has.
Well, Rahul, we can confirm, as we broke first here on India Today, that the Indian Air Force has submitted a dossier containing 12 high-resolution satellite images to the government. These are images that are not out in the public domain, so nobody has them. They are of a classified nature, and these completely establish an 80% strike rate of the Indian Air Force's Spice 2000 penetration bombs that were used for this particular strike. There are 12 pages containing these high-resolution images that have been submitted now to the Prime Minister's office, the MOD, and the National Security Advisor. In addition to these 12 pages of images, there are also synthetic aperture radar images which were captured by an intelligence aircraft, a surveillance aircraft, flying in Indian airspace shortly after the strike actually took place. The sources in the Indian Air Force say 80% of these Spice 2000 bombs hit their targets. The other 20% were for redundancy purposes because it was a precision strike. Very importantly, these bombs, the all Israeli-made Spice 2000 bombs, were fitted with penetration warheads, which means they were designed to actually break through the roof, causing a very small entry wound, as it were, in those structures and explode on the inside. So all of the damage, or most of the damage, would actually be inside, and the images that are coming out, even the commercial satellite images that have come out, from Planet Labs, etc., are actually commensurate with the kind of damage these weapons would have caused. So these bombs, which were tested in Pokhran starting in 2014, would cause the kind of damage that we've seen, which would not be very apparent from the outside or externally, because there's not a lot of explosive in these. They're designed to penetrate through those reinforced structures and then cause the damage. So all of that damage is internal, and remember, Pakistan has not put out any images so far of anything on the inside. So there are no ground pictures so far of the actual establishment buildings. So the Indian Air Force says 12 pages of satellite imagery, classified high resolution, synthetic aperture radar, as well as the use of these particular weapons revealed first time here on India Today, suggest that those images, even the commercial satellite pictures, are commensurate with an 80% strike success rate.
So 80% strike rate, remember, there are certain TV channels that are making it seem they've accessed the images. They haven't. That's a complete lie. The fact is that there are commercial satellite pictures that have been put out, which show that there's some damage, but not damage to the extent that the Indian Air Force has claimed. Now the point is, where does the truth really lie? What do we make of this? So to understand this in perspective, I've got Air Marshal P.S. Ahluwalia. We've seen these satellite images. We haven't seen the evidence that's been given. This is commercial satellite images. So I just explain this to our viewers. You've got these satellites that are up in the sky. They keep taking pictures at certain rotation. They've taken the picture. This is not immediately after the attack. This is some hours after. This is later. So they've got a pre-picture, they've got a post-picture. And that doesn't show as much damage. So the question that's being asked is, how do we determine the level of damage? But the Indian Air Force has now officially given a dossier which has very specific details, and the Air Force is convinced, and I think Air Marshal Ahluwalia, you can explain this better. If the Air Force says we struck, their professional credibility at stake, and therefore no one should really doubt that. Air Marshal Ahluwalia.
Rahul, I think I'll split it two ways. One is factual and the other is perception. The fact is that 6 Mirage 2000 aircraft struck the target at Balakot very effectively. The fact is that they went escorted by 4 Su-30s and also had AWACS and refueler. The question is whether they struck or not, I think is not a right question to ask, because all these shots that you are showing have been taken by the Cartosat. That's the imagery satellite that we've got, 7 and 7A, and they have a resolution of something like about 30 centimeters resolution, and that is very accurate. So having said that, it is very, very clear that they went there, they struck, and that is very important, because that was the objective, that to send a political message that we are not going to accept the kind of losses that we're going to get through terrorism. So I think the objective was achieved.